You guys having a good time? Yeah! All right, how great is this? This is fantastic. So, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get right down to it, people. They talk about the home court advantage, right? The home court advantage, you heard about this? It's big sports crowd, yes. Okay. We're in New York. Everybody, New York, right? Okay, the natural thing we want to do when we start bringing these folks out, right? These amazing folks. They're going to entertain you. They're going to enlighten you. We're going to start the home court advantage. And we're going to bring in Mr. Matt Lech. Matt Lech, everybody. Matt Lech, majority reporter. The Matt Lech Media Empire. Just go with all this cinematic business. Am I right? And of course, who can forget his partner in love threatening? My man, my main man with the classic country sounds. Give it up, please. All the way, David Griscom. I'm gonna call you Cole for all those things you got. This is free, right? Yeah. This is complimentary? Yeah. All right. Now, we are also going to give you an argument. Right? So for that, we need a superhero. We need a superhero of the philosophical kind. We need the best possible superhero. Please, 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 dig deep. Give it up for Mr. Ben Burgis! There he is. And of course, we really, really need you to dig as deep as you can now. Just find it within your soul. For my main man, this is Revolution, Mr. Jason Myles! Let's rock the clock.
Give it up for Conan Neutron. We're not even from out here. We're from hella far away. And Conan goes, dude, you're going to be in New York. And I was like, yeah, I'm telling him to be in New York. He's like, I think people are going to show up to this show. I was like, I know, right? I've been coming to New York forever, man. Playing to nobody, so this is really cool. So thank you all so much for showing up. And I know it's because of Sam Seder. So. You, sir. Free shirt. Ben Burgis, my new neighbor. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. They say Mexico isn't sending their best, but check it out.
Right?
We are sending our best to Mexico.
Are those Mexicans? So when we flew here, these aren't really jokes like Naomi has. This is just us talking shit before the show. Yeah. It was like a cold open. But this is a true story. True story. There's a little Jewish woman that'll be in my ear. She pointed this out to me because I didn't even pay attention to it. We flew into... 2
minutes in, we've got the casual anti-Semitism going.
That's what you're here for, Ben. Just keep us honest.
It's our beer. Ben knows I love Kanye. But enough with the two jokes. But seriously, so I'd never seen this before, and I don't even know if you noticed it because we're all stressed out and Ben gets kind of chilly on the plane. See? And so I never saw this before, and it was a memorial to 9/11. Maybe you guys have flown out of the Palm Springs airport. I didn't know. I've never seen a memorial like this. Usually when you see memorials, it's like a dirty-faced fireman with like dirt on his face, and like it's flag. But this memorial was literally the planes exploding into the car. Jesus Christ.
Oh, and don't forget, George W. Bush, like reading my paper. They put that in the memorial.
That's amazing.
What, reading to the kids?
Yeah.
Yes!
It's because he's such a sweet fella, you know?
I think we all felt like we just wish we could have been read to by George W. Bush.
I would say, as somebody who, you know, went to public high school in Austin, Texas, when George W. was our governor. He does do the voices very nice.
Dude, what? Okay, I hate flying. I love horror movies, hate flying. Like, love Final Destination, we'll watch part 1.
Yeah.
Right? Hate flying. I hate, Jordan, do I hate flying? Yeah. She's saying I hate flying, just trust me. And to see the planes crash as you're taking off your shoes and the terrorist shit? What the shit, Palm Springs?
Takes your mind off the ticket price, though, right?
Lucky to land, yeah.
Oh yeah, and then like in my mind, so if you people who float and watch these shows, you guys got a couple bucks. If you fly in like mountainous regions, it's rough. Again, hate flying. But I think that I sound tough. I think it sounds tough when I scream. And in my mind, this is what happened. The plane is taking off, and this big gust of wind hit it. And in my mind, I said this, man. I said, "Oh!" Whew. That was
good.
According to Jordan, I said, "Oh!" And then I grabbed the seat in front of me.
Mario 64 goes.
That left wing masculinity, man. They're breaking in their boots.
Just to frighten the rapists. The plane's woken up.
I don't know if the planes woke. I did find out on Monday. So anybody who watched my show on Monday knows that the power was out at Podcast Manor on Monday.
Podcast man.
I had, Sam was on, we had like 3 times normal viewership. I was doing it for my favorite coffee shop like this. But while we were out earlier trying to find a place with Wi-Fi, I don't even remember what the question was, but there was some kind of question for Siri.
Oh, yeah. I said, so me and Ben live in Mexico. Not together. Not that that's weird.
Close.
Fine.
But we don't live together. No matter what you people think.
Yeah, just got to Seinfeld that sentence. Not that there's anything wrong.
But not that there's anything wrong. No,
but we're out like trying to find a place.
we're trying to find a place.
And we had Jason asked Siri something, and Siri told me the answer.
She told me, and I said, gracias.
She said, I don't know what that means, and you said you're a racist.
I called her racist.
That's what you'd say. And her response, I swear to fucking God, Siri is programmed to respond to the accusation of racism by saying, no, I'm an anti-racist.
That's anti-racist. And then gave us links to kindy books.
Last part isn't true.
I've been very happy to hear, Ben, I don't mean to embarrass you too much, but this is too funny not to share. Because when Ben was first saying he's going out to Mexico, I was stoked for him, a beautiful place, you know, it's going to be an interesting experience. But we were in Los Angeles, California, and we were at this really awesome mole place. And we're sitting down, sorry Ben, but we're sitting down, and you know, they had all these different drinks, and Ben's trying to figure out what he wants to order, and he looks at a Oaxaca margarita, and he looks at the waiter, and he goes, "Could I have the chacaca?" And I was very nervous about Ben's Mexico experience after that, but it seems like he's got some good tutors since then.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
Sir, I will have you know that I've done 42 days of Duolingo since then, so you know, I'm on top of it.
If I am the person translating for you, that's how bad it is for your ass. There's a lot of nodding and smiles. Well, should we bring some people on?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We got a great show coming up tonight, y'all. Really, thank you so much.
Please!
It's certainly like, not to be sappy, but it really is nice to see everyone's faces. Like, there's not, like, it's so meaningful for us to be able to do our shows and have this community and stuff. But there's that kind of weird moment where you realize you're just sort of sitting in your room talking into a camera.
Yeah.
And like, you know that some people are watching, but you also just feel like maybe I'm just sitting in my room talking to myself for 2 hours. So it's wonderful to be able to see all your faces tonight.
Share a room with all you.
Yeah. You've never been on Joe Rogan, right?
It's on his Tinder profile. You may know me from things such as early Zero Books videos with shit audio. The befuddled man on Joe Rogan.
I'm
That's
just
not
waiting
on
to see how much more he's got in this. Before
It's on my Tinder profile.
Well, should we?
I think so.
We bring on the man who, if you ever watched the Michael Brooks show, you probably know him as Bhaskar. Consistently said, no matter how many hundreds of times he was corrected. My good friend, my co-author on a book we're working on for Verso, my editor, Jacobin, a friend in real life, very excellent person, even though I will have you know, the first extended conversation I ever had with him, I told him that I think O.J. Simpson probably did do it, and he accused me of being racist. And I wasn't even programmed like Siri to know what the response was to that. But, Bhaskar Sunkara.
I don't know when I said that.
It was the night that you did like a debate with Kashama Sawant at the Mayday Space in Brooklyn, and like we went out for drinks afterwards.
Must have been the drinks. I had all sorts of theories going that after 2 to 3 drinks, probably. But, yeah.
What is your best OJ theory at the moment?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think he.
Y'all didn't think you were getting OJ jokes.
I think he did it.
But we didn't bring you here to talk about OJ.
What the memorabilia thing was totally. When he went back in, I mean,
You have to put that into context,
yeah,
right? You have to put that into context.
Yeah.
Don't go ad hominem.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious. I know that you are working on another book besides the one we're writing about Grenada. That's coming along.
So Grenada, actually.
Okay, see this.
Told you. Told you.
Maurice Bishop, the Prime Minister of Grenada during the Revolution, actually gave a speech where he said, "I have to really thank Ronald Reagan for his speech last night." It was this warmongering speech, like basically threatening invasion. And he said, the rest of the world up to this point thought we were, Grenada. Now they know we're Grenada. But no, the book's going, I'm about 75% finished with the book and 120% finished with my advance. So yeah, the book's going okay, but it's the cold calculus of economic compulsion that I think is going to get it done more than the interesting history.
What do you mean I can't get another advance about this Grenada book? The young people want to know about Bishop. Everyone's like, who? Can you tell us a little bit about Maurice Bishop and what happened in Grenada?
So Grenada's interesting because it is the only socialist revolution that happened in a Anglophone country. And yeah, okay. Yeah. That was definitely an applause line, but still early in the night, we're working our way into it, yeah. But in general, Anglophone Caribbean countries were marked by their kind of parliamentary conservatism, even when they did have nominally center-left parties, and there were some experiences like in Guyana had a very strong left, and Jamaica had a strong left. There was very, very strong limits to what they could do, not only because of the specter of U.S. imperialism or political culture or a host of other factors, and also the fact that these countries were at the time still really deeply wedded to the British Commonwealth in a lot of cases. Grenada was an example where you had a classic experience of you have an authoritarian government and the only opposition were socialists. Over time, underground, they got more and more radical, facing repression, and they were able to take over the government with literally an army of a couple thousand people total, which is very militarized in an island of only 80,000 at the time, the Gary regime. They took it over with maybe 6 to 8 guns.
Wow.
I actually got the story from someone who was involved in this raid on a barracks, and he told me, what's the best time to launch an ambush? And I just said, what a strange question to ask me. what would you say? What's the best time to launch?
Why do you look at me?
Now!
Right, that's literally a hate crime. All of you looking at me, and you, Bhaskar. You weren't supposed to look at me.
And you, the microphone. You're asking.
We all have microphones, Bhaskar.
Jason?
Yeah, Jason, what do you do?
I would end with people when they were asleep.
That's the answer. No, but he said particularly, he said throughout history, apparently this is common knowledge, I didn't know, 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. is a good time. 4 a.m. is the ideal ambushing time because early risers are not up and, people go to bed late, are sound asleep. So they just rolled in with a couple of rifles and and some firecrackers and other stuff, and stormed an army barracks and armory. Wait, time out. How the fuck does that work with firecrackers? Well, people are
Someone's never had a firecracker.
That's just like badass kids. That's all that shit is.
Burn yourself, Jason.
Fuck your mother,
They made a bunch of noise, they scared people, they had some bolt action rifles, and they took over this armory. And then after that, the reason why I say revolution instead of coup, because a lot of these, left-wing military takeovers in countries, some of them bad, some of them a little bit worse than bad in terms of their ultimate consequences, like the Sour Revolution in Afghanistan, things like that, are not really revolutions. They were more like military coups. The Derg in Ethiopia, Grenada was a legitimate revolution because it had a very small band of people, but then you had mass support among ordinary Grenadians blockading streets, storming police stations, arming themselves, and in a bloodless revolution, I think no one was killed. They were able to take over the country. And what's interesting for me is that they implemented a very successful economic program. So successful that the IMF and World Bank were eventually, by year 2 of their revolution, willing to give them loans because they're like, oh, the macroeconomics of your revolution are quite good. You're using state-owned enterprises in intelligent ways. They're basically doing their own version of the new economic program and creating a sort of state-led developmentalism that was wedded to mass programs of literacy and healthcare and infrastructure building. So it was really quite impressive, especially if you consider the scale of resources they had.
Now I have a quick question for you. There were a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, there was a good amount of leftists, because this is the late 70s, early 80s we're talking about, from where I'm from in the San Francisco Bay Area.
I can't believe I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, got more applause than only successful socialist revolution in the Anglophone country.
You're not from the Bay, but you don't know about this shit. Debs all day. There was a bit of a small migration of leftists from the Bay, kind of leftover holdouts from the Panthers and other organizations that were moving down there as well, because they felt that this was going to be a bit of a socialist utopia in Grenada.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of these people it was continuation of not just socialist development, but also some of the black nationalism of the 60s and 70s. Here was a government that was going to add a real economic dimension to struggle that in the U.S. was turning towards just cultural nationalism. without the kind of real redistribution of the Black Panther Party days and whatever else.
Ben?
So what happened then? I mean, I don't want to be.
You want to spoil the ending for everybody?
Yeah. So ultimately, it ended in fratricide, and it did so, I think, in a interesting way, because I think it has concrete lessons. Because often this ends as a simple parable that people say, which is revolutions kind of eat their own. But in the case of Grenada, you had the tension between they maintained extreme levels of party democracy until the very end, but they suspended parliament. Their goal was, even though they knew they had a mass mandate, they wanted to establish different institutions of participatory democracy from below. They wanted to wait until they had a constitutional referendum, and they said, okay, we'll hold elections in a couple years after that. We basically won a term or 2 terms based on having the revolution. We're going to establish certain norms. But what that ended up happening in that case was Maurice Bishop, the leader of the revolution, was incredibly charismatic, and he had the support of the masses. But within his own party, there was tensions, and he eventually had his position in certain ways diminished within his own party. There's a lot of confusion about what happened next, but Bishop ultimately wanted to go down the road of the more kind of fidelista, like Maximo leader.
Yeah.
And he felt like he had the mandate of the masses, and that things were slow and bureaucratic, and he shouldn't have to listen to a central committee composed of 20 people from a party of 900 people when he was on an island of 90,000 people, and he knew he had this massive support, and the party seemed to be turning against him at the grassroots level. But you're on an island where the only democracy is the party democracy that's left, so they could both claim democratic mandates. And eventually Bishop accused the party of planning a coup and started agitating among some of the masses to basically do an attempted self-coup, this way I would describe it. The party then arrested him, put him under house arrest. Masses of people went to the house and freed him. The soldiers decided not to fire upon the people. So they did the right thing, they let them go. But instead of going to the square like they thought, he went to a fort, an armory, and he armed himself and his supporters. And in the end, there was an effort to retake the fort. There was fighting. The soldiers say they were fired upon first. The soldiers also say that one among them was kind of beat up and victimized and whatever else. And I think in a fit of anger without much coordination, Bishop and the Bishop supporters in the Central Committee were executed. And I think it was done by the initiation of a soldier whose sister was also a soldier and had been beaten up and stripped down her underwear by the mob that Bishop led. That's the conclusion of my book, but I mean that's kind of roughly what
You're giving it away for free.
Yeah. So, but a lot of it, I think, the takeaway for socialists, I think the concrete takeaway, aside from the human drama, and really Bernard Cord, the leader of the Cord faction, that many say launched a coup against Bishop, and that led to the violence, was friends with Bishop from age 9 years old or so. And they were involved in a student-led protest when they were 11 and 12 respectively. They were family friends. So it's really a tragedy of it's such a small island, the familial roots are so deep. But if you don't believe in any form of parliamentary democracy, or if you don't believe in any sort of permanence of the state, you end up in a situation where you establish party states. And if you have a party state, you don't really have a democracy. You have the democracy of 900 or 1,000 cadre, and no matter how embedded they are among the population, you create situations like this where there's no way to mediate a dispute, especially in the context of the U.S. threatening invasion, the country being incredibly armed. You have well over a couple thousand people in the army or militia, and you have tons of guns floating around because you're trying to deter an invasion, and it just ended in horror. And the U.S. took advantage of the situation as soon as there was this internal chaos, and they invaded soon after under false pretenses. Without the support of the UK was very angry, both the Queen and Margaret Thatcher, because the U.S. basically invaded a country that maintained the Queen as a head of state, and they intentionally did this because they thought it was going to give them some protection from U.S. invasion. They were wrong, and yeah.
Well, we didn't bring you in here just to talk about your book. Yeah, I mean, I think these do track though, because if you're talking about the issues with like the party state in the U.S. and in a lot of Europe right now, there's this kind of question of class alignment, where like traditional working class voters are either not voting or even being attracted to like the parties of the right, and like. It's interesting, like, there was a piece in Texas Tribune recently where they went and they interviewed non-voting Texans, because there's always been this dream in Texas that, like, Texas is not a red state, it's a non-voter state. They went and they talked to voters, working class people who don't vote, and they were saying things like, yeah, I voted for Obama in 2008, and then I felt that he sort of betrayed the promises that he was given to us, and I don't think it's worth my time to go out and vote for like a Democratic Party candidate. And like, anyways, like class alignment is like a very broad crisis. But if you have this kind of lack of confidence of working people in the United States and in Europe, like what are the kind of things that people on the left, people who think that we need to be fighting and winning those kind of voters, instead of like writing them off? Like I think a lot of like members of the Democratic Party are more interested in sort of winning, suburban voters in a couple of situations. Like, what are the kind of questions that we should be asking ourselves to try to sort of deal with this crisis of like class alignment? I know it's broad, but
yeah, that's a big question. I should have read the show notes. So I would say, first of all, that we need to tell people that we need the coalition that could bring about, to begin with, American social democracy, right? And that coalition is going to be different than necessarily the coalition that could win an election, because there's many routes to win an election. The Democratic Party route of getting 51, 52% of the vote narrowly through suburbs and winning over more professionals, off-put by the Republican Party, quite obviously works as a route to get Joe Biden elected and win a majority in Congress for a time, and even with like horrible background conditions, like hold up okay in a midterm election. So their strategy obviously works further terms, because this is what they want. They want to be able to govern, do a few things on the margins, have technocratic office, have more respect for the intelligence community, like whatever the main like Democratic Party lines of the Obama-nauts that kind of stayed in power. This is okay for them. But we really want a different sort of majority. We want to win 60% of the American people over to a program that can really fundamentally transform the country, bring about universal health care, a massive expansion in unionization, kind of the social base that can really change things for good. Now, there's only one route to make the country more equal, and that has to be a politics framed around taking money and power from the people who have money and power and giving to people who don't have money and power. So I feel like often people say, okay, this is just a simplistic vision of what the working class is. You're not going to win over every single working class voter. Of course you're not. People are infinitely complex. The world is infinitely complex. The point of theory and strategy is to reduce something infinitely complex and make it more parsable. So we need the sort of agenda that we're going to talk about things that are in objective economic interest. We're going to do so in a plain-spoken way. We're going to tie it to social forces actually seem like they're going to get something done for you. One complaint that people had about Jeremy Corbyn in the UK and his 2019 campaign especially was that it seemed too much like a wish list. There was too many things on it. It wasn't focused enough. So I think, sure, yeah, keep it simple. Keep it to the same 4 or 5 main agendas. And again, you're not going to win over everyone, but you're going to win over enough people that you will actually be able to, if you do win an election, change things and not just squeak by through the suburbs.
So I don't mean to pick on you because like I have the same question and like I don't have an answer. I'm just throwing it to you because you're a smart guy. You were a person who's thinking we should draft Bernie, right? You pushed for draft Bernie. You know, you saw something that, I mean, like, you know, a lot of people didn't see that opportunity. It was something that really mobilized a lot of people. A lot of people here today, I'm sure, went through their identifying as like maybe a socialist or Marxist, like through being attracted to that whole the Bernie campaign. I think a lot of people on the left didn't recognize that. So that's why I want to ask you this, because one of the things that's tough, and it goes with the Jeremy Corbyn thing, but like I talked to some of my union friends in Texas, and they say to me, it's like, well, you know, when DSA comes to particularly like working class communities or even just the union folks, and they start promising like, we're gonna have a Green New Deal, we're gonna have jobs for all, right? All these things I'd like to support, but these people are like, sounds nice, but like I have no confidence that like you can actually produce that. And I'm just curious if you have any sense of like, how do we go from not only having things that we think could be like attractive, in the sense like we can make a sell on an idea, but also convince people that, oh, we are the people that you should be talking to make your life better, right? Like being able to follow through on actions versus just being the guys who have like a really nice picture of the future.
So I think you need both a infrastructure at the local level so people can actually see you involved in local wins and can see their politicians concerned about their day-to-day needs. I think we see that in New York. We do have a handful of members of the state assembly. We have a handful of people on the city council, and there are people that are tribunes of the needs of their constituents. And sometimes it's very mundane things they're doing, but that adds a level of credibility when they're then supporting a national candidate. And obviously we need to have some sort of win. You know, we can't just promise people the moon and just assume that's gonna work. Is that a chicken or the egg problem? I'm not sure. I think local wins plus a big soaring national rhetoric, and then also saying, listen, we tried to get you help here. We tried this way, and you know, we're not gonna just shrug our shoulders. We're gonna say, here's the reason why we failed. Here's the people standing in the way, and they're not all Republicans.
Yeah. Right on.
I think that's right. Thank you. Do we think we should bring on, unless anyone else?
Yeah. So we do. Our producer Jordan reminds me that we do have a very important question for Bhaskar we didn't ask. So this is going to come back up later, but right now, just whatever pops in your head. We're going to do a quick free association game. Dietary restriction. Man, you don't need to, like...
Sorry. Free association, vegans.
Okay. Country.
Cuba.
Nice. Verb.
Expropriating.
Really? Really?
Music genre.
Pop punk.
Cartoon.
Dragon Ball Z, is that a cartoon?
That is you successfully named a cartoon, and that is not a recent one. Place.
Havana.
Food.
Cuban. Thank you, sir.
Dance move.
Electric side.
Damn.
All right. Well, that is going to come back up later. But meanwhile, Matt, who do we have next?
Is it Sam Seder or is that a Vigeland?
One of them.
He didn't
That is
Well, round of applause.
Is
Emma
Emma ready?
Vigeland, my co-host, not my co-host, Sam Seder's co-host. Welcome to the stage.
Does Emma know? in the green room?
Oh no.
Someone's got to get her? Well, while we're waiting, can somebody let me know, because I've been dying to figure this out. Oh, she's here? She's here? Let's bring her on.
Yeah. David didn't have anything planned. He was just going to challenge me to pronounce a bunch of Spanish words.
Go Giants!
Oh man.
That's fine. That was too soon.
Hey guys.
Emma was living the rock star life in the backstage.
I may or may not have been about to smoke pot.
I'll be right back.
He means it completely
It's funny because it's not a game.
And
I've
whoever
known
said
Matt Lech for a few years. That is 100% not okay.
I thought Matt didn't like me for a while. He has an indifferent ass face. He's just high.
Who said go Giants? That better have not been sarcastic. Motherfucker.
How are the Cowboys doing right now, y'all? Can somebody give me a score update?
I'll do it right now.
6-6? All right, let's go, Dak.
That's not great news for the over.
You're not supposed to have.
Huh? Oh, yeah. No, I'm not.
He's
Sorry.
just kidding.
I'm so disappointed.
Well, we have a game to play, don't we?
Oh, are we playing a game?
Yeah, are we starting with that?
Are we playing Jordan?
Are we ready for it, Jordan, or should we start a little bit with something else first? Do we need a second?
She says go for the game.
All right. So I'll just ask her guess first. We're going to explain the rules really quick, and audience participation is encouraged. But we'll just guess choice here. You pick your top 3 of left-wing, socialists, communists, whatever, figures that you would want on either your threes basketball team or quarterback, wide receiver, running back.
Gotcha.
And you get to pick what sport you want to do. It's just, I feel a little football. I know we were originally going to do basketball, but I'm a little football obsessed right now, so I'm feeling that way.
I'm feeling that too.
You're feeling
You
football?
gotta keep
We need Matt Lech though to also.
Matt just getting
weigh in.
stoked.
Matt's getting stoked. He'll be back very soon. Right. So, where's Brad? I don't know where Bradley is. Bradley's cheering for the Cowboys at home.
I'll let him know that you asked for him though. He'll be happy about that. All right.
Did we want to do a Thanks, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, no marijuana downstairs.
Did we want to do this as a panel, or are we doing it just with our guests? Just really quick.
Do it in a draft snake, like go around like that.
A
Right?
draft snake, everybody pick one and we see who
There
would
you
win.
go,
All right.
We should all do our picks at the same time, I think.
So my show.
Because I would like to start.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
I have my team. We've already selected. It's going to be. We're going to take the big 3. And look, when you have these conversations, the game changes over decades, right? Like, would Larry Bird be as good in today's NBA as now? Yes. And I agree with those folks who say yes, and that's why I'm taking with my first 3 picks. I'm taking Abraham Lincoln at 6'4".
Oh, you stole that.
And you've got to like adjust that for current times. He's 6'8".
I am taking
right?
General Sherman and General Grant as the other big 3. So we got, and then for my backcourt, I'm taking Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
This motherfucker got in
Why did you
really
get the first
early
pick?
and took all the good political
So Bill
players.
Walton, who forced through the NBA Players Association. You can check out our Talk with Big Waz on Left Reckoning about that.
Yes.
And also Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who is published in Jack Magazine. So that's my starting 5.
Damn good starting 5.
Okay. We're all playing our own game, it seems. But you can't draft anyone else, because I had football for mine. With the first pick of the left-wing fantasy football draft, I'm picking none other than probably one of the greatest human beings to ever live, Paul Robeson at running back. It's tough because I'm trying to keep it, other than that, I'm trying to keep it like left-wing figures rather than...
Because the odds on David picking Paul Robeson #1 were
So
basically...
100%.
Yeah.
You could have had Paul Robeson for basketball too.
But that's an easy one. If y'all don't know who Paul Robeson is,
whatever.
Yeah.
if y'all don't know who he is, you should definitely look him up.
Icon.
At quarterback, I've never seen any history as to whether or not there's some folks in the audience might be able to tell me this is true or not, how good he was at the game of football. But at quarterback, I'm drafting none other than the man himself, Eugene Debs. I just feel like that's an all-American boy.
Are you like 1875 Debs?
If I got
or 1904 Debs, which Debs you got?
Well, you gotta go.
Like fresh out the
We gotta go real.
above.
I want naive, early career Eugene Debs, right?
Not afraid of the pressure.
So do you think Debs came out of jail like
Buff as fuck. Buff as fuck. Chewing nails, talking shit. Buff as fuck. Yes. I've yet to be the motherfucker come out of jail hella just calm and skinny. Buff as fuck. Organizing like a motherfucker. Yes. As post jail Debs.
And look, at this point, again, I don't know these people's stats too well. I'm just going for big guys. I think that, I thought it was great, for example, Fetterman in Pennsylvania. I respect, like, big dudes. I think that we need to really be pushing this.
They get 3 picks, then 3 picks. You gotta sneak it around.
It'll come. You will never guess this tip.
Yeah, no.
No one even here knows it. But I'm going back into socialist tradition, taking the great Texas socialist himself, Big Tom Hickey, and the only thing that matters there is that his name is Big. And a good target for Eugene Debs in the back.
All right, Emma, who's on your socialist squad?
Man, I guess there's a lot of great athletes that you can choose from, right? I'm gonna go with Muhammad Ali immediately.
Imagine Muhammad Ali as a running back.
Are you kidding me? Right. I mean, it would be
Lower
like
the shoulder.
It would be like Bo Jackson, but way better. I'm gonna go with that. You already took Abraham Lincoln, right? To center.
6'4".
That's a sneaker.
Damn.
Tall point guard.
You have inspiration
Yep,
behind
inspiration. You got Mao backwards dunking on
Are these AI?
hoes. These are all AI. You got Lennon with 2 basketballs like a goddamn globetrotter.
All right, I'm gonna take John Brown. John Brown, he'll shoot his shot.
Let's go on offense, baby.
He might be like a 40% shooter, but at the same time, when he shoots, he shoots.
Wait the shot clock, you're gonna need that.
And then, fuck it, Bernie Sanders is my
But again, do you have Bernie Sanders running for president 2016 or getting arrested with Dr. King?
Yeah, no.
Sanders.
You could literally do 2016. I mean, we've all seen him play basketball in 2016.
Hey, if you need a guy shooting free throws, this is Bernie.
Just like, foul.
I mean, if I'm given the choice between 70-year-old Bernie Sanders or 25-year-old Bernie Sanders, I'll leave 70-year-old Bernie Sanders to Bhaskar.
7-year-old Bernie Sanders got the form down, though. He's just been shooting free throws for decades.
He's got the birds on his side.
No, that's my 3.
Matt just picked 5 because he's greedy.
And because, Grant and Sherman come in with Abe Lincoln. It's my big 3. It's like Oklahoma City Thunder.
So Fidel Castro, there's a bunch of videos of him playing basketball. It's very clear that people are afraid to guard him. So, assuming that my place and country is where the game is being played, then Fidel for sure.
Yeah, but Fidel was 40 again. What happened? So what happened to Pepe?
It's basically the Stonecutters episode of The Simpsons where Homer wins every game.
Then, I don't know, if Fidel's going to get all the points, it's really just about chemistry, right? So, I know there are probably like 5'5" Italian guys, but maybe Sacco and Manzetti.
At first, no one picked Che as an enforcer or something like that.
I thought he was going to go the Che So
Chase
it'd be like Chase
a poet, though. You don't want that on your team.
But there's one other person I want to ask what their opinion is. If you guys watch my show, TiR, I have a good friend. People watching this fucked up, man. Thank you, sir. I would buy a drink if I had money. It's funny because you think it's a joke. Ben knows the truth. Please welcome Deep State Kuba. Kuba, we were, of course.
This is Slavic formal attire. By its colors, you should guess where I'm from.
Kuba, good to see you. I love you like a play cousin. Who would be... Kuba, who would be on your leftist E squad of fantasy players?
Wait, are they playing esports or is it an e-squad of like sports ball for real?
Okay, Kuba, we'll see you at the next one.
Kuba, let's say they're playing Rocket League.
Then like Che, because he kind of could be good at anything, and if you lose, like he's the guy you bring out to explain why you lost. I am so sorry, but we were thinking about the revolution. I mean, I don't agree with him, but Kim Il-sung, because he seems like he would win at any cost, right?
I mean, he was a badass, like, fighter, right? Badass soldier?
I don't know, because he wrote all of the books about that.
For the sake of this exercise, we're taking him at his word, right?
He has a plant named after him, and it's like a cool one with a flower and everything. So that's two, and the third one, Enver Hoxha from Albania, because you will have no follow-up questions.
That's a solid squad. That's a solid squad. Was there anything else we have for Bhaskar?
Wait, before we go, I mean, real quick, audience, I mean, who's winning? I mean, everyone just bullshitted a team here.
I mean, Matt's winning because he cheated.
It's Matt? Emma?
Yeah.
Deep State Kuba? Bhaskar?
No Kim Il-sung is in this house, Duce!
Dave? I guess we're giving it to Matt. So.
Drop the mic!
Bhaskar, thank you so much for chilling with us. We'll be back up a little bit later. Everyone give it up for Bhaskar Sunkara.
I am so proud, that like my good friends.
Cheated, y'all. What the fuck?
My good friends, my collaborators, that over the course of like 20 production meetings leading up to tonight, I taught them all how to say the man's name correctly.
I was a little nervous when I saw it. I was like, I don't fuck up this dude's name. He stared right at me. Wish I could have been Kuba.
I think there's just one person who has an issue with it, and he's yet to be on stage.
Ooh, I'm looking at him right here.
There he is.
In the green room, the real life green room.
So, should we start talking a little sports here?
Sure.
So, there's been a lot going on in both the NFL and the NBA, and I'm just curious, like, in particular, starting with like football, which is the only thing I care about.
Well, I think Emma really cares about either, so we're trying to talk about basketball.
If I'm being honest about it, yes.
A lot of times people have been using this term for like the NBA, like it's like a players league. The players wield tremendous amounts of power. The NFL doesn't seem as strong, but you did see at the Bills-Bengals game a pretty incredible showing of player solidarity. People aren't familiar with that. Joe Burrow and you're the expert.
Josh Allen, yeah.
And Josh Allen basically said, we're not going to play this game, because somebody got like critically injured.
Almost killed.
Almost killed. It was one of the most devastating things I've ever seen in an NFL game. And I'm just curious, like, your sense as somebody who follows the NFL, somebody who has sympathies with, like, working people of all different stripes. Do you think we're entering into a period where maybe NFL players are going to have a little bit more ability to dictate terms and to fight for themselves?
I hope so, and I think so. I mean, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about what like actual labor action means in professional sports, because the layman, will say, oh, you're making $1 million a year. Why do you have kind of the sympathy of labor, or why are you a labor organizer? But the reality of the situation is in terms of the NFL, these guys come largely from nothing, and their careers are 3 to 4 years, where they have an opportunity to make $2 million a year for the rest of their lives, and then what does the rest of their life mean? And so it's incumbent upon the left to actually support those people and not write them off as millionaires, other people that are trying to seek glory, especially because, as opposed to the NBA, there is a vacuum of support for professional football players, largely I think because a lot of them come from the South. It's a more conservative sport in general. But the way that labor organizing is tilted, it totally fucks over NFL players. Their contracts are not guaranteed. It'll say you're making $2 million a year, but in the end you make $100,000 a year, and that's the entirety of your contract because it's not injury guaranteed. And so
I just want to jump into speed.
Yeah.
I think that we probably have like a 30% football watching audience, and
They're backloaded.
But no, just like talking about that. I mean, that was the serious thing with Hamlin. It was just big news, like, oh, well, they're going to give him his contract while he's injured. This guy who almost died.
Thank you, NFL.
It's disgusting that some guy who breaks their ankle or their leg doesn't get paid after, think about if you get injured on any other kind of job, getting workers' comp, getting taken care of. I mean, this is like a very clear labor issue, and it was just amazing to me how easily the NFL got away with oh, it's so sweet that after this guy almost died playing football, they're not going to cut his pay for the next.
Well, I think, we often forget this with college sports, is that the labor issue of what you guys are talking about, I think this is why sports to me is kind of an important thing, and why I think we should all kind of embrace some of these conversations, especially when it comes down to sports unions. These are some of the most powerful unions on the planet, right? So when these guys aren't involved in other labor struggles, it should be a problem. Because it also wakes up the community to labor. So when we think about college athletics and the student athlete, that term is coined after a very bad lawsuit where a few young men broke limbs and weren't back in the day and weren't able to play again. So they sued the NCAA, and then you get the student athlete, and you guys are getting your education paid, yada yada yada. $1 million athletes, when these contracts, what we're trying to say here is they're extremely backloaded. So you might get $100,000 your first year, maybe $200,000 your second year, and then renegotiate the third. That's why there's always people that are renegotiating. The talk about contracts gets real convoluted in that. So when we talk about the strength of labor unions, I think it's real important to kind of look at, when there was the basketball strike that Obama stopped a few years ago.
Yeah, an incredible moment, I think, in
Play ball.
Honestly, you're 100% right, especially because in terms of labor disputes, there's nothing more front-facing than actually professional sports disputes with their leagues. And I think it's incumbent upon us all to show solidarity with those unions because it's so public, right? And with the NFL in particular, people don't realize that even though it's the most profitable league in the country, those contracts are not guaranteed. So if it wasn't for the immense public backlash and understanding of what happened to Damar Hamlin, he would not have any money after experiencing what he did. It's like, yeah, right, like experience your cardiac arrest and just deal with it. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of what professional sports leagues deal with, it's a prerequisite for what the rest of us do. So, good point, Jason.
And I think that you brought up a very good point about the concept of student athletes.
Yes.
And in some ways, that was a legal fake out in order to keep things going as they were without acknowledging any objective realities. But also, from the way that it looks to the public, students, and it's weird saying this like at a time where a lot of people have experience with tertiary education, but you go back not that long, and students are this upper middle class sort of proto-PMC category. If you can convince the public that these athletes that are standing up for compensation and for just treatment,
or just like the free expression, like just really quick, like, you know, like I'm a big UT Longhorns fan, and like during the George Floyd protests, a lot of the black players on the team started protesting "The Eyes of Texas," which is a song that they sing after every game, right? And I'm not going into it too much. You know, there's controversy about it because it was written, you know, in 1870 in Texas. You know? So but basically all these players were trying to show up and be like public, you know, and be like leaders of their community. And the Bubba Boosters at the University of Texas got together and they complained because Tom Herman, the coach at the University of Texas, was not forcing the players to sing their favorite song, which, like, look, that's the goofiest shit ever. It's like, you're mad that some 19-year-old kid is not, like, singing your fucking favorite song at the end of the game? Yeah. Anyways, they fired him and they hired Steve Sarkisian, who's been a disaster. But they hired him because he was a yes man. And he was a guy who's not going to allow student athletes to be able to express themselves and, like, you know, importantly, all of these things, like, you know, when all labor rights, but even clearly, like very clearly, when you have like a profile on a platform like an athlete, like there's a question about pay and compensation, but there's also the question about your right to have freedom of speech. And, you know, it's so funny. The right in Texas or across the country has been all worked about freedom of speech. I didn't hear any of those motherfuckers say shit when they were not letting those players, you know, express
I have to say, the most conservative motherfuckers in North Dakota are the ones who can't stand when players celebrate after a fucking touchdown.
Oh, that's uncouth. That's uncouth. That's a shameful act, right? Isn't that what Joe Buck said when Randy Moss pretended to move? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off now. But no, I mean, point being though, I think that there's a lot to be learned from the fact that with these college athletes and what they're actually negotiating with their colleges is, right? Like, they're always told that they are student athletes first. But the reality is that they are raking in millions and millions of dollars for their organizations, which gets funneled into coaches' salaries and also into endowments.
I can't stop thinking about Johnny Manziel and how much money he brought in for Texas A&M.
Didn't see a lick of that. I mean, he's a better example for his purposes because he comes from an oil money background, right? Family. But for all of these guys,
there's literally sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
Like, it is a funny thing. Johnny Manziel, if you don't know Johnny Football, comes from a super rich family, also an incredibly like corrupt and seedy oil family. And there's a fighting cock, like, you know, when you fight, you know, chickens against each other, named the Manziel in Texas. Anyway, but he should be taken care of for what he did for the university. I totally agree. I'm just,
the point being is that people don't realize that when these college athletes rake in millions and millions of dollars for their university, that all goes to their coaches. That does not go to them. It's actually legally precluded from it going to them.
It doesn't even go to the university necessarily.
Right. It goes.
Harbaugh, basically.
Yeah, it goes to these coaches, and so honestly, these coaches act essentially as I don't want to say too much, but they are responsible for disciplining largely black athletes, and then they get paid millions of dollars, and the athletes get paid very little. And so I think it's a ground zero for a labor issue for sure.
So to go in another direction, we're very honored to have Emma on stage with us. Emma, has been so wonderful at the Majority Report, but before that, you were somebody who went out and talked to people, which is a very rare thing in the podcast
I don't even know how to do that anymore.
No, but it's good. Sort of think like of Emma as like the right-wing whisperer. She's talked to so many of these people. She's covered so many of these people. I remember when she was on my show like a year ago, I showed her this clip of like Josh Hawley saying something at a National Conservatism Conference, and I paused midway through and said, "Where do you think he's about to go with this?" And
I don't remember this at all.
And she was like, "Oh, he's probably gonna say blah 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 blah." Exactly what he said, right? Like, so I don't know if that's
Look, guys, I'm smart.
something you're proud of, that you are right in Josh Howell's mind. So yeah, David, we were thinking about this because we are coming up to as slightly depressing a thought as this is, a presidential election.
And people are being, the thing is, like, for Donnie, for little Donnie, like, people are being very disloyal, very disrespectful, for all the
Very
things.
disrespectful.
A lot of people think that this guy from Florida seems to have something going on.
And I will say, this is an anecdote, but like, whenever Matt and I have done any DeSantis thing, we get these little DeSantis freaks in our comments, and they are like taking marching orders, like hundreds.
It's not organic, it's all
yeah.
paid freaks.
But they're ready, and I'm just curious, as somebody who went and you saw the people wearing the Trump hats and the whole thing, do you think that Mr. Ron DeSantis has the opportunity to just pull away some?
And a follow-up, did they think you were one of them? Or,
Just
my hair was even blonder at that point.
Hell yeah.
So my highlights kind of made me a bit more one of them. But, I've been kind of vocal about the fact that I don't think DeSantis has it for a while, and that's just a gut feeling. I have no ability to predict the future. But my sense is just that there's a lot of Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, pre-primary hype that is not based in anything except for the amount of money that he's able to raise, and the fact that there's a massive amount of pressure in the Republican Party establishment to get Trump without the baggage. And for them, DeSantis is an easy out. And so that drives a lot of the coverage, right? The concept that they can get somebody who can harness the, quote, populist energy of Donald Trump without having to actually deal with Donald Trump. And I'm skeptical of the fact that that's possible. So for me, I think Donald Trump should be the front runner and should be treated as such for a long period of time. And for the rest of us in this building, and people who don't want to see the conservative movement succeed, Donald Trump being the front runner is actually a good thing. And the Pied Piper strategy from Hillary Clinton was a disaster because Hillary Clinton was the one running the Pied Piper strategy. If there's any other Democrat running against Donald Trump, does anyone in this room actually think that Donald Trump can win another presidential election right now? He can't. Okay, Kamala. And Pete Buttigieg, I totally get it, right? I totally get it. But for where we stand now, right, Donald Trump represents chaos, he represents anti-democracy, and I think that the Democrats would be smart to actually tie the Republican Party more largely to that movement, as opposed to making it just about Trump, because they're desperate to try to find somebody else, and I don't think the heart of the Republican Party is with anybody else.
When you started doing the interviews with Trumpers, was Trump the front runner, or do you remember the moment when you're like, oh crap, Trump has this against these losers?
I don't remember the moment, but I do remember exactly what you said, which is that, any other candidate would come up and there was not any enthusiasm. And then I went to one Trump rally a week for maybe 3 or 4 months of my life.
Passionately.
Off
the clock.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome. It was probably treated
Thank you. It changed my life. It really changed the way I saw the world, and also, it was interesting to see how much more willing they were to speak with me, as opposed to other reporters that I was in the scrum, right? Like I chose to actually go into the crowd, which was a different dynamic, but there were other non-white reporters that were in the press pen that were treated very differently, but I think I passed as a Fox News reporter, and I was with...
You think you have the fascist Barbie look?
Yeah. I was with TYT, and the channel at the time was called Rebel Headquarters.
Yeah.
So when I'd say that, they go, oh, Rebel Media. And I go,
Oh, hell yeah.
I
You go, yeehaw.
go, yeah? And then they were really willing to say whatever they wanted. And so, honestly, when you provide an empathetic ear, you can get a lot out of people.
Yeah. Well, speaking of get a lot out of people, Emma, this is very important. Free association.
Yeah.
Industry.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You have to, too many drinks.
Sorry?
So, David, free association game. Industry.
Name an industry.
He's just saying like it's a psychology thing where they trick you into saying
What's
something
the
bad.
first
So like
thing
he's
that
asking
comes
you,
to your head?
you're supposed to
Buster
say
got this
oil
one
or
It's like a Mad Lib,
Oh, Matt Lech for Trump supporters.
No.
just in general.
What's an industry?
What's an industry? What comes to mind?
Podcast?
There we go. The podcasting industry. I like it.
There we go.
Clothing.
Leather pants that are fake.
Verb.
Pleather.
Wait, no, ask the verb again. She's had a few drinks.
How do you pleather something?
I mean, you can plunder something.
I pleather the shit out of somebody.
Plunder these pants. Yo, my brother.
Emma, tell us a verb.
Huh?
A verb.
Verb? Speak.
Speak. All right.
Pleather.
I like it. Pseudoscience.
I'm podcasting.
Don't upset anybody.
Jordan Peterson? Is that
All
good?
right. Absolutely. Exercise.
Boxing.
Cult leader.
Jordan Peterson.
Works twice. I like it. All right. You keep Emma up here. Want to get Jake Abbott, if Jake is in the house. I know we're promising him, for all the Jake heads out there. Thank you, Jake. That's not the only reason we asked him up here. We have promised Jake Abbott, but also, who else is here is somebody who, I don't know if there are a lot of Bob's Burgers fans here. That's probably the primary show that you associate with him with. Is Samuel Seder here?
I'm not doing any free association. I'm not doing any of that. None of it. Why are we sitting on the stools?
Because you're the talent.
Why do you guys get the nice chairs?
Because we're all the way down
Listen to
here,
the
like as the
On the
as
right
the
side, we get
hosts.
to look taller.
They
Makes
control the
sense.
means of production.
I didn't dress for
If you guys would have saw Cedar's rider before the show.
of my. Hi.
Hi, Sam.
All right, guys.
What? I'm not answering the first question.
Oh, thank you.
The Shapiro formula.
All right, we can do that.
I'm gonna bring the Shapiro
What are we
formula.
doing?
All right, let's do it.
Listen, I should. I was going to save this announcement for tomorrow on what used to be my show, but might as well do it here. Tomorrow, when you tune in, it's the Majority Report with Steven Crowder, and I will be joining the Daily Wire. $50 fucking million.
I cannot believe you would degrade
There were some
yourself.
decent arguments on the
And
left, but now
I cannot
I see
believe you
things in a
would,
slightly different way.
you would degrade yourself and take that slave contract.
It is a little bit of a slave contract, but I come up with $50 million. Now I realize Ayn Rand is where it's at. She was right. She was right.
That's where the better slave deals.
Moocher.
I love the concept of a slave contract too, right? Like, did slaves just not have a good lawyer?
That's right.
Like,
Just smear your blood right here in a X-shaped formation. Thank you. We'll send this straight to Liverpool.
Well, we lost the, okay, there we go, right?
We're looking for, where did Matt go?
This is the, Matt, I think, refuses to do math, so he's not.
Matt's prepping. I mean, look, this is intense shit. Matt needs to get all of his powers, and the only way he can do that is off stage for a second. We'll be
People can
very
pretend.
soon.
You can just pretend that I'm
Matt has the equations for the good YouTuber.
Yeah.
Matt, where are you?
Our prime looks sexy.
Matt's vomiting right now. I don't know math well enough to even begin to
This is
decide.
pretty amazing.
That we actually made formulas for how to be a good YouTuber.
I did not
Matt,
know
this
this.
actually is Matt's work. He's returning to the stage right now. He can unwrap this a little bit. So Ben Shapiro's formula, which we saw earlier, was a formula for political legitimacy, which is something that you have centuries.
That's what we
of-
work on back home in Mexico, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have like centuries of philosophers, and politicians, and theorists, and revolutionaries arguing about what makes a government legitimate. Ben Shapiro not only figured it out, he has a precise mathematical formula for, and that's how you get these tens of millions of dollars in your like good slave contracts.
Yeah.
But this inspired.
This is almost as useful as finding out, like, at what point a slave starts losing their sort of usefulness equation here.
This is when we can fire you.
So Matt, what is your equation for a good YouTuber?
So I'm looking at this now, and I'm realizing I probably should have studied my own work, but you...
And not been high when you wrote it?
Yeah, probably not. Because I don't even think this is the actual equation. But I'll try to understand this one. This is a YouTuber equal... I have no idea what F means, because
F shows up throughout the entire equation. So if you don't know what F means,
There's more than one slide.
So, I assume it means feelings. I had ideology variable. I don't know where that is on this, but we'll go with this. YouTuber equals feelings plus feelings times reality. Plus S, and S is...
Substance?
Sam?
S is Sam Seder. So you calculate all that, and then you find your F prime minus your R prime, which is reality. And then you find out if you're a good YouTuber.
You know what? I do want to say this about that. Exactly as much thought went into that as went into Ben Shapiro's formula.
Exactly.
Did you make this too, Matt?
This ain't mine.
This is producer Jordan made this?
Yes, this is Jordan.
Producer Jordan made all of them.
Yes.
Can we get a shout out for producer Jordan? For
Yeah, that leprechaun-like creature you see up there in the balcony, that's producer Jordan.
She's in my ear right now, so I can hear her do this. I'm getting yelled at.
Yes, she put together the Jason's formula for effective soundboard use. I think there's also one in here for anybody who's ever read Capital by Karl Marx. There's a formula. She put together there. There's David's Griscom formula.
Dude, that's a shitload, a pound per person. That's like, I'm a big boy, I could not.
I've read the paper. It was peer reviewed.
Yeah, Yeah, there we go. There's Marx's formula for confusing people. Capital Volume 1, Chapter 1. I see some stuff about yards of linen in there, constant capital, variable capital.
I like the Greek, right? Latin is for everybody, but real alphas use Greek.
That was a G move on Jordan's part. Shout out, Jordan.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so funny, by the way, like, you know, a lot of people haven't read Capital, which is fine. But like, you know, a lot of people think that it's like, it's just this long text of Marx being like, I hate the bosses, working people should be in charge. I hate the bosses, we should, you know, guillotine the bad folks. When literally, like, it's just like 15 chapters on like, how much should a Coke cost?
You know Ben's teaching a class on this shit.
I know. And how much should a Coke cost?
I actually am, and Jordan is in the class, which makes me appreciate this.
It's fucked up.
But I think there is something like kind of interesting here in that like this is Shapiro's shtick, right? I mean, like in other words, like if you actually read Capital, to use that as a contrast, you have like Marx like thinking really carefully about, okay, I think there's this gap between the surface appearance of the economic relations that rule our lives and how it actually works. I'm going to make like a slightly different version of the same argument in 15 chapters in a row to make sure you really got it. And, you know, Ben Shapiro, I think, is largely like his power comes from the fact that he's really confident and he talks really quickly.
My power.
And he's
My power comes from the fact that I talk really quickly.
and he is like a certain kind of person's idea of what a smart person should be like. Right? I mean, that voice that Emma just made, right? I mean, this is like, it's like, oh, he's such a nerd, he must be brilliant. Right? Look at him making a mathematical equation. This gotta be, there's gotta be something awesome and profound going on here. And it's certainly not the only reason why this dweeb is as prominent as he is. I mean, there's certainly, you were jokingly referring to the $50 million slave contract. He offered Stephen Crowder. Another part of it is that you have.
No, I couldn't disagree with you more.
That was part.
Because exactly. The reason why we know the name Ben Shapiro is because he was sort of a freak show when he was 16. Because everybody likes oh, look at this kid who's well-spoken. Doesn't really matter what's coming out. Like Jonathan Crone. I don't know if people remember him. But when he was 12, he was like this phenom at CPAC. Because he's a 12-year-old, saying what he heard Limbaugh say. And Shapiro was the same way. It's just he ran into a guy who knew how to do business. And the Mercers happened to hook up with him. And then there was an extraordinary amount of money that poured in. And that's it. Nobody talks about Ann Coulter anymore, and nobody's going to be talking about Ben Shapiro in 15 years. He's just a guy who got financed, and that's it. Nothing he says is compelling as an entertainer, which is what he is. Speaking as one myself, we both do infotainment. He's fucking horrible. But if you give me an eighth of what was spent on his Facebook ads, honestly,
yeah,
I'll have similar numbers.
I would like a mathematical equation to prove that is the case.
Would you have
Seder, you are an older Jew than I am.
Yeah, exactly.
Sam, would you have a Highlander-like Jewish fight with Ben Shapiro?
I would.
Sam, yeah.
I'm not even sure I know what that means, but yes.
Sam would bring up the Pope of the Jews thing. And then
There could be only one.
No, I mean, I think his appeal is largely purchased. And, I think that, just look around in our entertainment world. With the proper marketing, garbage can be incredibly profitable. And I think that's what his, attribute is. I don't think that, I think Limbaugh was genuinely talented. He was a horrible person. I'm glad he died. I wish he had died earlier. But genuinely talented. A guy like Sean Hannity, absolute garbage. Completely untalented. Was lucky enough to get the lead-in from Limbaugh on radio, parlayed that, was a good soldier, was the only person at Fox who was not actively molesting his producers. And so his career remains. But
I
Sam,
remember
what's your
listening to
list
him.
of actual talented conservative personalities?
I think Tucker Carlson is talented because to have that level of an absence of shame. I mean, he's a smart guy, and to have that level of absence of shame, I think is unique. I mean, it's borderline sociopathic, but I think he's talented. Right, you're right. It could be just totally sociopathic.
Legally protecting himself.
But I think he's talented.
So nicotine, it's freezes his mind.
There's a lot of nicotine he's got flowing.
And a lot of money.
I think, who else is talented I think, and he doesn't seem to be getting much attention anymore. Savage. Michael Savage.
Oh, you're going old school.
Yeah, I think he's still doing radio. He's
Tom Likas? I mean, you're going old.
No, Likas is garbage.
Do you think that when you cross over to conservative radio, you will be the most talented person?
That's the thing. Is yes. And when I will vow that $50 million, I'm going to fucking earn that.
So
Kevin McCarthy's going to be president in 4 years.
Sam,
That's just the first $5 million.
How much? So what does the ass look like you give up on 50 million? Like, what do you say that?
Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to be able to rescind the barring of only 2 terms for presidency. She's going to be president for 16 years. And that's going to be right when I'm peaking.
So, Sam, speaking of media, you've been in left media for longer than Emma's been alive.
Say it again! Say it again!
Because I see the blank stare in her face, and I was like, back in the day, and it was like, oh shit, this motherfucker talking about shit.
See a tumbleweed go across the stagecoach.
They had radio back when you was young, Sam.
I remember one time I said I wasn't really into radio, political radio growing up, and I thought I saw Sam sold.
Who would have left us on Telegraph?
Sam.
We were doing Morse code, and that's when
Okay.
really had to know your shit.
So, I did a lot of research on your days in Air America because I don't know if you remember when you came on my show the first time, which was a very interesting time to have
He
you on
doesn't
the show.
remember.
I have no recollection of being on your show. No.
No
To be
timeline,
fair,
no context.
I couldn't tell you if I was on my show, like prior to Friday.
I just wish there was like a special day me and Pascal cried a little bit. Sam Seder came on because he loves. He's like, I don't know, I was high. But I did do a lot of research, and I feel like an asshole for doing that. But no, there's a few documentaries, and I had to get a lot of footage and a lot of interviews of you to get the right fucking clip. And can you explain to people, because when we talk about left media, and when you came on my show, because we do exist in this weird Twitterverse where people have a real skewed view of how powerful reaches are, and
Force the vote, bitch! Sorry.
No, not really.
That's good. That's good. Emma did our transition for us. We're going to spend the next hour talking about force the vote.
No, don't do that. I can't have it. I'm gonna force that vote so fucking hard.
Can't wait to force that vote.
But seriously, there was There was, because you know when people leave you on Patreon, they say like why they left, and this person left the longest comment. They said, you had Sam Seder on your show, and Sam Seder single-handedly destroyed the ability to have Medicare for all. And I thought to myself,
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Just him?
Sorry.
But seriously,
We're not going to hold it against you. We still invite you on the show. But, I gotta say, I wish you hadn't done that.
Not cool.
In retrospect, I realized it was a mistake.
but seriously,
Should have had Medicare for all. Should have. Press this button or that button, and I didn't have my glasses on. I couldn't see which button was for Medicare for all or not Medicare for all, and I hit the wrong button.
To this day, that's one of the few comments I will always remember, because I thought it was the funniest shit I've ever read in my life. But, that being said, these political conversations have changed so much, and when you're coming in, there's actually a really interesting documentary about Sam's time at Air America, and the thing you guys are doing is you're getting ready for the big 2004 election, because this is this very big moment. And when I was on your show another time, you probably don't remember.
I do remember that.
Oh, fuck, really?
He thinks you're talking about Friday.
I did.
He does it all. He does it all.
We were selling ads on that.
Hey, this Jason guy, he's got some ads on it. Let's bring this guy back in February. Nobody got that. It's blankets. Thank you. But seriously, the conversation back then was we have to get rid of George Bush. This is what we're president. We need to impeach Bush. And you were the only voice. There was no internet media sphere like this. Maybe pirate radio, maybe kind of sort of college radio. What do you think about where quote unquote left media is today compared to when you were starting with people like Rachel Maddow, Chuck D, Mark Maron,
Franken.
Frank, oh God, Franken, yeah.
There was I should just say there were a lot of blogs. Like there was, blogs now seem antiquated, but at the time they were very vibrant. And there was a lot of good work coming out of there. In fact, some of the best publications now I think are a function of the blogging that was happening at that time. But I don't think you can look at the left media now in isolation. The dynamic that was really the most significant one at that time was that Jesus, I can't even remember his name. The guy who had the website that everyone based their news on.
Drudge Report?
Drudge Report, yeah. I mean, literally, every producer in news would go to the Drudge Report to get their news. And that's what would drive the conversation. And so shit would get developed on Fox, and it would get laundered through the Drudge Report, and then some, producer at ABC would be like, this is the news, and MSNBC and every other channel. And so it's a very different landscape, and I think that part of it is broken, largely in part because the right doesn't need to launder their shit through the mainstream media anymore. They don't need the mainstream media, or what they call the mainstream media, to get their value out of media. They don't need that anymore. And
that's why Daily Wire smells blood in the water, by the way, right? To not be Fox News, to be the alternative to them.
Right.
To be the complete the complete juggernaut, but just online.
exactly, because Fox News sat on right at the fulcrum, and their job was to sort of take the shit in the swamp, launder it, and put it into the bloodstream of the mainstream media. Now the only people who care about the mainstream media are really old people in the Biden administration. Honestly, I think to our detriment. And the right doesn't even care anymore. They don't. They have their own system. and it functions. They get everything they need out of it. So the left media is not it's not serving the same function that it did then. I think some elements of it are to sort of like stop narratives, and Twitter has been an effective tool for that, because a lot of journalists, incorrectly I think, but just like you say, like assume that what's happening on Twitter is what's happening in the country, and people can jam that. I think Twitter's sort of falling apart, so I think that's going to be, there's something that's going to change there. But I think the left media has been good in terms of like feeding ideas to a nascent, genuine left in this country. Left, 18 years ago, when we were dealing with the Bush administration, did not mean what it means today. It's just a different, we did not have, we would have Bernie on our show, Janine and I, and it was like, whoa, what's going on?
I remember watching Anthony Weiner on The Daily Show call the Republicans a wholly owned subsidiary of the Republicans, and feeling like, oh, this is my guy.
And people thought Jon Stewart was that guy. I mean, and I think on that network, Janine and I were probably to the left of everyone, and we were not, the idea of using any type of like Marxist language or notions of that it just wasn't on the radar. I mean, it just was not part of Janine and I's generation in terms of growing up. And it was not, it wasn't, I think, until like post-Occupy that these things sort of opened up a little bit. And that was 7 years after we launched that in America.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, and was it done by the time Occupy launches, right? You guys were done by that time.
Oh yeah, we were done by a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you ready to move on?
Yeah, and I think that actually I want to bring Bhaskar back on in a minute, because one of the things that happened in this period was Jacobin Magazine coming up, which was still didn't get as much applause as Jason Sanders in the Bay Area, but it's all right. But I do.
Here's Bhaskar.
Oh yeah, here we go.
I wasn't actually sure if you wanted me to come up now.
Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt the whole show for this, but could somebody please tell me what the score of the Cowboys 49ers are?
Damn!
Because I need to know.
That's some goat fiend shit right there.
The over is totally fucked.
Yeah, I'm sorry. All right, let's go Cowboys. Anyway, let's go.
What year was Jacobin founded?
2010.
What's that? 2010. Okay. So yeah, this is and Air America said is off in like.
Air America, I think, went out of business for the final time, because it went out of business like 4 times in 2009.
Right. And I think that, like, in terms of what Sam was talking about a minute ago, like, injecting a different way of thinking about, left politics, and it's certainly something I was thinking about, when Matt said what he said a minute ago, is like, I can remember going to like a Ralph Nader rally in 2000, yeah, I think there was like one person who gave like half a clap for that. That wasn't meant just an applause line, it's just historical information. And I remember 16 years later, going to see a Bernie rally in 2016 and thinking that's like, all right, here's a guy who's actually running for the Democratic nomination, who's a plausible candidate for the Democratic nomination. And his rhetoric, certainly on economic issues, is like vastly left of what Nader was running on for this fringe candidacy in 2000. And Sam mentioned Occupy Wall Street is obviously a major thing that contributed to that shift. But also Jacobin has certainly played a big role in giving at least a sort of core group of tuned-in people like a different way of thinking about what their politics are. So I mean, I wonder if you want to kind of speak to that for a minute, like what you were kind of going for when the magazine started and the role that you think it's played since then.
Yeah, I mean, I was part of the Young Democratic Socialists from the time I was 17 years old, so I was around this very small group of socialists in America, and I thought we were all kind of weird, to be honest, but I thought not so weird that we couldn't maybe have 10,000 people around us instead of just a couple thousand. And I think that was really the goal of Jackman. It was very modest. It was to keep alive socialist ideas for another generation, maybe 20, 40, 60 years in the future. I didn't really think that anything like what we saw in 2016 and 2020 in both the US and UK would be on the horizon. So I was thinking, I was like 21 when Jackman started, but I was thinking in terms of it's about time to leave a legacy, you know, there's not much to do right now, you know, I guess I could go to a few, like, you know, there's still like the tail end of the Iraq War mobilization was like, really ended in 2007, so there really was nothing, you know, the anti-globalization stuff had really petered out by then, so there was a vacuum.
I mean, you know, if we're just broadening this out a little bit, like, you know, I think I'm curious to hear both of y'all, you know, just in general, like, your sense of where we are at right now, because, like, you know, we had these Bernie campaigns that I think were really inspiring and, like, really meant a lot, and, like, you know, I remember, you know, being absolutely ecstatic after, like, Nevada or all these other, like, big moments, and right now, I mean, you know, I think we are in a little bit of a difficult position in trying to build a left in this country, and, you know, it's not helped by the fact that, like, people like Ben Burgis and Majority Report are stopping brilliant strategies like forcing the vote. No, but in fairness, like, you know, as much as, like, whatever, that was a whole insane drama, but, like, I felt that whole moment really spoke to a kind of helplessness that a lot of people feel in this post-Bernie moment, and I'm curious what you all think about where we're at, because, you know, while I feel a lot of that kind of, like, depression or, like, you know, feeling like we're not as articulate or coherent as, like, a political movement right now, I also do, I mean, you know, I just turned 30, so I'm not like a, you know, haven't been around on the left for a really long time, but I remember when, like, you know, when I was a socialist before Bernie, it was like a personal little secret, you know what I mean? It was like a thing that I held in my heart, and, like, now we get to talk to a lot of people, like, there is something here that wasn't there 10 years ago, and I think it's important to not, like, sit on our laurels and just sort of be happy.
But what happens, though, when that personal secret that you keep inside, right? Because it doesn't really matter, right?
No, it doesn't.
I don't know what anyone's political affiliation is in this room, right?
No, it's a personal thing.
But what happens when that thing becomes almost like a lifestyle, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I remember in 2016, like, the single most annoying kind of boomer was the person who would say things like, oh, I'm actually to the left of Bernie Sanders. I'm like a, you know, anarcho-Maoist, you know, blah, 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 right? You know, but, you know, I think probably I'm going to support Hillary Clinton because, you know, and it's like, well, politics isn't actually what's in your heart. Politics is about what we do together, collectively, right? So, I mean, it's irrelevant how you understand yourself in your heart, right? I mean, what matters is what goes on. Thank you, Jason. What goes on in public, and I do wonder. I mean, if this was going what Jason was getting at. I mean, if this is like a kind of worrying sign of regression, that I do see a lot more sort of weird factionalism on the left now than that I felt like I was seeing in the previous few years, and much more like what I remember when that was a secret in my heart for like 20 years before that.
I think the factionalism, and maybe this is aspirational, but I think the factionalism is a stage of development. And, you know, I also think that, like, I could be reasonably accused of being a generational essentialist. But I really do think that enough people died that the concept of, like, socialism and even communism can be discussed as a solution to the problem of capitalism. and in a way that didn't exist prior to 2010, really, in many respects. And so, I don't want to like attribute it too much to generationalism, but I increasingly feel like much of this is going to be a function of, there's a lot of other factors, but of time. And I think the factionalism, Bernie came out of nowhere in many respects. And I don't think, well, I know for a fact that Bernie did not enter the 2016 election thinking that he was a viable candidate. He entered the 2016 election thinking he was running an issue-oriented candidacy, that he was going to raise the question of income inequality. He was waiting for Warren to see if she would run. There was a huge campaign at that time to draft Warren. Many of those people went over to Bernie. He did not have an operation that was generating, burners or anything like that.
I remember when he first announced for president in 2015, he came out, he had a speech that was on a folded up piece of paper in his jacket.
Yeah, no,
he was like, I don't have a lot of time, got to get in after lunch.
He didn't have a full policy apparatus. He wasn't, I don't even think it really occurred to him until early 2016 when he started to sort of there's a chance I could win this. And he started to, I know he at that time reached out to try and build more of a campaign at that point, and it was largely too late, particularly for the juggernaut that was the Clinton thing. But I think so much got invested in Bernie, but the energy pre-existed Bernie. It had not coalesced, and it had not defined itself, and I think we are still going through the redefinition of that. And once the sort of central organizing principle, which was Bernie at that time, essentially becomes no longer the reliable central organizing principle, there's a lot of things that happen and people look to different places, but then I think it works through that. And, I studied late antiquity in college, and we're in that period where the temple's been destroyed. Everybody rushes out, and different sects are trying to come up with the solution. And then, in that day and age, it would take 100 or 200 years before you figured out what it was. One solution was Christianity, one was, rabbinic Judaism. But I think it's going to happen a little quicker because of technology these days. But I think within 10 years, there's going to be the next iteration of that movement. And I think it's going to be more rooted in an ideology than around a person.
I hope it is Judaism that comes.
And it'll be Judaism. Fundamental Judaism. So, this crowd all in Payas
If we have
in 10 years.
Well, in this metaphor, the Rabbi Hillel of 21st century socialism is with us on stage. Bhaskar, do you want to speak to anything Sam just said?
I was following
In Hebrew.
It took a turn at the end, so I'll rewind to what he was saying maybe a minute and a half ago. But I think that fundamentally, Bernie's politics, of course, was speaking to the fact that we live in a capitalist system that's predicated upon inequalities of power and wealth. But the question is, it has these inequalities and it naturally fosters resistance, but can you aggregate those daily acts of resistance to the point where collective action becomes viable for people on the scale that it would need to be to change the system? And I think that's not clear right now. I mean, we had from the 1860s until the 1970s, you could say discernibly, there wasn't maybe the socialist revolutions that early Marxists expected, but you could go to a working class area anywhere in the capitalist world and you would see people who generally, maybe 60+% of them, voted for some sort of party of the left. They would vote for in a place like Italy, they would vote for either a socialist party that said we're going to bring about socialism in 50 years, or a communist party that says we're going to do it in 40 years, or a far left Trotskyist or Maoist party that said we'll do it tomorrow. And the aggregate of that would be 60%. Most importantly, they identified as workers, as members of a class, whether or not they were bound to the class as socialist or communist militants, or they were bound to the classes in a cultural sense, or they voted for Christian democratic reform parties, or they just were members of their union or church group or whatever else. There was these deeply interwoven network in civil society that could be resources in the event of social turmoil. And it could even up the odds. It sometimes did. Right now, everything is shattered and hollowed out, that I think we need something like a Bernie Sanders, not just to take the energy and discontent out there, but to galvanize it into something that's the language of politics. Because right now, we don't even have that language. So Bernie would take people's very personal grievances. My rent's too high, I can't afford health care, I got laid off, and I think it's my fault, or it seems like society's telling me it's my fault, and just tell people it's not your fault, it's millionaires and billionaires' fault, and we have a solution to the problem. And I think it's at that basic level that populism, in the form of the left populism of Bernie Sanders, or of Podemos in Spain, or countless examples throughout Latin America, is really, I think, the mechanism that we could reach people. And that's often very national, through big national campaigns, through the media, and it's almost a spark from above before it could regrow from below, which is not something I would have said 5-10 years ago, and it's definitely not a traditional socialist view of change, but I think the subject has changed, and we need to kind of reform the class before we could even think about changing the country.
If I were to just jump in, I think to make it, and thank you so much. I've been really retreating into reading a lot of history of the early American labor movement and the early American socialist movement, particularly my part of the country, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana. And one thing that's really interesting to see, and I just sort of pose it as a challenge because I don't have the answer to this, right? But one thing that's really interesting to see is that, for a long time, the socialists were sort of tailing the populist People's Party, right? And it took a while before they became a hotbed. I mean, Oklahoma was a hotbed of socialist politics in this country in the early 20th century, a place you probably wouldn't expect. But you know what happened there was people recognized that there was a shift in the conditions of working agrarian people in that part of the country, where you had people who might have been born on a farm that their father owned or their grandfather owned, and in a generation, they still lived on the land, but they didn't own it no more. They became tenant farmers on their own family's land, and it took a hell of a lot of fighting to reform a lot of socialists who are very Marxist doctrinaires. The peasants aren't the agrarian people aren't a revolutionary class, but they sort of realized tenant farming, these people are becoming workers. And they started speaking to tenant farmers on the conditions of what they were experiencing at that time. And you saw this massive explosion, and it's a very inspiring and interesting thing. And obviously, not going through all the history of the 20th century, didn't get us to socialism, but they had a lot of power and a lot of influence. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that for us right now is this is a very good time, I think, to start to look at our conditions and seeing what new things are opening up, what questions and frustrations that people are experiencing right now that are novel in the sense of an experience that's related to the contemporary example of capitalism in this country. And right now, if we want to expand from where we're at, we really need to be thinking about who are we not talking to, where are these struggles happening in society, because that's the only way you're going to win. I think that we're in a place that's better, I think, than we were 10 years ago. But this is a time, I think, not to sit on our asses and sort of just be happy with that, and start always thinking, how can we expand. What questions can we be asking to sort of expand the movement from where we're at right now?
Agreed.
Sam,
Before you go, I have to ask you a few questions. We're doing these leftist Mad Libs.
Not free word associations, all right?
I didn't say free word association. I said something different. Why you gotta treat me like that? I'm not Ben Burgis.
I was saying that to Burgess.
Okay. Okay. Seder. Pseudoscience.
Yes.
It's like a Mad Lib. You have to tell me a pseudoscience.
I have to tell you a pseudoscience?
Yeah.
I mean,
You know what a Mad Lib is. You got the badass kids.
what is a pseudoscience?
See, give me a pseudoscience. Name one.
Hydrochloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
Give me a TV dad.
Sam Seder.
Yeah, I played a TV dad like 5 times, I think. Like I did 5 pilots called Boys and Girls.
Brian Cranston.
Uh-oh.
In the middle, right?
Guess who's home?
Yeah. We got a newborn.
Did Alan Thicke do the theme song? For animation? An alcohol.
Yes.
Your favorite alcohol?
I just tried Kratom in the green room.
I know exactly who you were hanging out with.
Yeah.
I know exactly where I don't want to say his name, but I know.
I don't think that's an alcohol, but it was good.
I'm so. Yeah, I will. I know who you are, Kratom dealer.
Okay.
A popular movie.
A popular movie?
Name a popular movie.
Oh, The Sting.
Can you name for me a past or present fashion trend?
A past or present fashion trend?
Let's see.
What about a future one?
If you have one that you think is finna hit.
Shoes. You'll understand in 5 to 10 years.
God, I'm so mad at the person that wrote this. A self-care practice.
I will revert to alcohol.
Wait, why was none of this what I was asked? Like, self-care practice, that's right up my alley.
Oh, word.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Massage. Lotions that Sam can't smell, right? And they're too floral. Those
Lavender.
kinds of- yeah, right,
Sam
exactly.
sounds like the worst foreplay dude. Oh, is that a scented lotion?
I'm not going to deny that has happened.
A natural disaster.
Lavender.
Mike Cernovich.
And lastly, an ing verb. A verb that ends in ing, running.
Get
thinking.
fucking out of here with that shit.
Well,
Fucking, that was what?
YouTubing.
Well, we're gonna do the.
yeah, so, earlier Sam and I were disagreeing a little bit about the sort of role played by the particular shtick of reactionary figures and giving them their status, right? Is there something about Ben Shapiro or Sean Hannity that makes these people particularly useful to their billionaire funders, that they can play a certain role, which is, my position, I guess Sam's, is that you could take anybody off the street and you could put them in that role. But I think, there's one guy, this is going to be a real smooth transition, you're going to be impressed by this. There's one guy who could have founded Jacobin magazine, and we were thinking that it would be really interesting to see if you could identify which of these articles Jacobin has actually published. So,
Bhaskar, I want you to know it took a lot of time and a very large group effort to do this.
Not all emotional labor is good for the working class. Was that an actual Jackman article?
Yes. Yes, I think it is.
Survey says.
No! If Kanye can't criticize Israel, no one can.
No. I hope, if it is, then I need to leave right now. Does anyone have a laptop?
The lost history of socialism's DIY easy bake oven.
That's hard. Yes. 100%.
That is not, wait a minute.
That 100% is.
What about creepy crawlies?
Wait.
Are creepy crawlies socialist?
If that's not a Jackman article, that's like a Trivian article.
So you would publish that one if you haven't yet.
I published that article. The Easy Bake Oven, 100% I published.
I remember that, so I don't know if it's the Mandela effect, but I think that there's an article.
So Mandela effect there. Okay. Finally, a Marxist review of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
I wrote that.
That's a really good title, actually. That should be taken, yeah. But no.
It's not that complicated. And in Arbor Day is
Honestly, all of them should have had the pants.
So that's very good syntax for an article. That we have not written that though.
Correct.
I should write that.
nuclear energy must break with its right-wing past.
David.
I'm a avid supporter of nuclear energy, but it's not popular enough in Jackman. I don't think we published that. Maybe we did. I'm gonna go yes.
I hear yes.
But we definitely did Easy Bake Oven. Somebody look this up.
Damn.
The U.S. should learn from our founding fathers and actually abolish Dairy Queen.
Whoever wrote these, I need to hire.
Jordan.
The new editor-in-chief of Jacobin, Jordan.
Seinfeld warned against double dipping, but the U.S. economy refused to listen.
First of all, that's anti-socialist. So that's not.
Wait, so there's double dipping in socialism?
Of course.
And my personal favorite, what Cody 2012 gets right and wrong.
Read the byline, Jacob, the byline.
I can't read it.
In
In 2012, countless Americans were confounded by the prospect of a little-known Ugandan warlord's grassroots campaign for the presidency as a bipartisan candidate endorsed by Oprah, Justin Bieber, and George Clooney. But once the fog of confusion had lifted, one thing remained: slacktivism.
I will say, at least for a 2023 Jackman article, that deck is too long.
Do we say no to Coney 2024 Democratic primary?
Yeah, no to that one. I totally forgot that Cody 2012 happened. It's all rushing back to me now.
That's a big touchstone for a lot of people.
Did you buy one of those kits to?
I remember being in Fargo in my fourth-story apartment, being like, "Shit, everyone's on board with this Coney stuff. We need to get serious about African warlords."
Wait. So what you're saying is Coney 2024.
Yes.
Hey, I'm saying relative to like Tim Kaine.
Biden Coney or Coney Biden. Huh?
Biden Coney. Does anybody here remember Coney 2012? Oh, come on.
Yo, he's still out there.
Okay, here's another question I want to ask y'all. And be
become a socialist.
Be honest. Who bought one of the little kits to save a little African boy from going to fight?
This was the
Thank
state
you for
of
your service.
activism during that time period. That's what I'm saying.
I shared it on Facebook.
Yeah. This is why activism
Where else do you share it?
Activism
Okay.
is limiting. Yeah.
Emma, Bhaskar.
I didn't buy one.
No, I didn't. No, it's too late, Emma. The pants say something different. It's some Coney 2012
You mean
pants.
the pleather pants?
Exactly. Okay, we did some Mad Libs with you guys, and now we are going to show you what y'all. Oh my goodness! Is this Bhaskar's? Ben has the list.
Yeah, so I think, yes. So from Bhaskar's Mad Libs answer, 10 reasons to oppose the vegan law. That doesn't really make sense. That one doesn't work. Next one actually works pretty well for Bhaskar's answers. The U.S. should learn from Cuba and actually expropriate. Pop punk is about class struggle. Dragon Ball Z must break with its random past. Protesters in Havana are demanding Cuban food.
That's actually because of the embargo. It's because of the embargo, right? Nothing to do with Central Planet.
The electric slide is not the answer to the
I'll write that piece.
Oh, podcasting trade unionists have long fought for fake leather pants. Actually, leathering is a very good idea. No, really, Jordan Peterson is good.
It's my fault.
I will say that Matt McManus and I actually wrote an article for Jackman a couple of years ago called Jordan Peterson is wrong about everything, so this would be quite a diversity of views if they also publish this. Nationalize Rebel News. And actually, Jordan Peterson is bad.
This is things, man.
The fact that you have both of them actually is consistent, right? That checks out.
All right. Do we have the next? So this is at the bottom of the slide. I know you can't see this. That says, not all, so this is from some of Sam's, not all hydrochloroquine is good for the working class. We should have listened to Sam Seder about kratom. Let's stop talking about the sting. It's high time to abolish future shoes. It's not that complicated. Ending massage lotion is good. And so I think this putting together the last couple of Mad Lib answers Jordan has here. The left should oppose Mike Cernovich by fucking.
Wow, I didn't know that was this.
That is a great throw.
One way to do it.
Yeah.
One way to do it.
You have your orders.
There's nothing that could upset Mike Cernovich more than you getting laid.
Without having taken his course.
He has a course on fucking.
It's called Be a Gorilla.
Who said it from the crowd like y'all win?
No one take that course.
I think he has an advanced date rape course. Was that wrong for me to say? About Mike Cernovich?
Any women in the audience who experience that bullshit?
Wow, all right.
We're gonna take some
trying to get
questions.
edgy.
We're gonna do some questions. We're gonna do some questions. I'm waiting for a microphone.
Well, before we take questions, I did want to say, in all seriousness, I should say, so I was about to bring up to bring into the conversation rather, our producer at GTAA, Jake. We actually have all three of the GTAA producers in the crowd somewhere. It's like being a drummer for Spinal Tap. He will not last in the position, but Jake is a survivor. I believe in him. I should say also, our graphic designer, Andy, is off to the side doing courtroom sketches, which will be available at the merch table along with the t-shirts and posters and all of that stuff. But Jake is not just a podcast producer, even though that is obviously the highest calling in life, is to produce podcasts. He also has worked quite a bit as a union organizer. And when we were thinking about this, because going along with some of what we were talking about earlier about sort of post-Bernie dislocation and fracturing and all of that stuff. What you can kind of orient people to feel hopeful about. That's like a concrete thing that they can do. I think involvement in that, has got to be near the top of the list. That even though we've still seen this overall decline, that has not stopped. Right, I want to be really clear on that. Like it's kept going, but there have been these signs of life in organized labor in the last year or so. That we have. This is not a pop quiz, but do you know how many Starbucks have been unionized?
268, according to Jack.
They're unionized Amazon warehouses, which is something that felt like impossible very recently. Things have been picking up a little bit. I think this is something that more people who would go to an event like this want to think about how they can support, how they can be more involved in. And I was just wondering if you could speak to some of that.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming there's more workers in the audience than owners of capital who could become involved.
All right, everybody who owns their means of production, say,
Owners of capital, speak up!
Yeah, I mean, even though, as you said, overall, like union density, like the numbers just came out, right? And union density did fall over the last year from 10.3 to 10.1%. There's a lot of organizing that went on that some people, at least like a year or two ago, would have told you is probably impossible. One is the Starbucks, the other, I heard someone say Chris Smalls, who organized his Amazon warehouse. And I think the main thing is just more that, of all the things that we talked about today, and we're talking about the fracturing, post-Bernie, getting involved with the labor movement in some capacity is probably the best and quickest way that you could get involved in socialist struggle, especially in between election cycles. So, I mean, I would encourage everyone, if you don't know what to do, like with your summer, just go work at Starbucks and try to organize it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love the fact that that's not an unrealistic goal at this point, right? There have been literally hundreds of successful campaigns. I know the Starbucks have kind of pushing back with everything they can. They fired a lot of people. They are.
Yeah. So for every store, there's been at least one unfair labor practice of Starbucks doing something illegal to retaliate against workers who are trying to organize.
So I am not a worker. I am very much PMC. Where are my bloodsuckers at?
This is something my toast at Kuba's wedding. I referred to his friends who were bloodsuckers from the military-industrial complex, and that was his response to that.
But for all my bloodsuckers, it turns out that workers are kind of necessary. They kind of do things that are really important, and it turns out no one is paying attention to them. So, if you want to do one good left thing that makes you feel like a better person, pay attention to them. Listen to Matt Lech. Or help organize workers and care about organization.
So we have some questions from Patreon, and I think most of them are aimed at Sam Seder. They're not, I'm fucking with you. But we do have some questions from Patreon. Who's reading? Jordan, are you reading the questions? I know that, but that person isn't talking right now. Oh, I don't know why that. So, if you've watched my show, you know there's a voice that you hear that sometimes we joke and say is an AI creation from Pascal and I. It's actually a real person, and they're here. It's M. Toussaint.
M. Toussaint!
Yeah! M. Toussaint, is your mic working?
My mic is working.
Okay. M. Toussaint, how are you feeling tonight?
I'm feeling all right. Do I have time for a quick landlord acknowledgement? Just like to let my landlord know I got you. Bhaskar got my back.
A landlord acknowledgement. I I didn't see that one coming. That was not in the pre-writes for the show. So
Apparently, they like to be acknowledged.
The rent checks.
Igris, Tucson.
Are we ready? Okay.
We're ready. So I sent you some questions.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking them over now to see which questions you're going to ask. You want to ask Sam Seder the first question?
Do we want the names?
You want to dox people? You always yell at me on the show.
Yeah, please all address information that they provide.
Yeah, go ahead and say the name. Go ahead and say the name. Fuck it.
Yeah.
They felt bold enough to put it. Fuck it.
This is from Eduardo Roca. I was wondering if there seems to be a need to discuss more about science and technology for the left, with subjects such as climate change, city planning, renewable energy, and other industries of clean energy, agriculture, etc.
Wait, I didn't hear.
Can we get a little bit of the monitors? Can we get a little bit of that to her, the monitors? We can't really hear it.
Was the question that should we be discussing more about technology on the left?
Technology and science on the left, yes.
Sure. I mean, I am not qualified to talk about it, but I mean, we interview some people who get into like policy, but I think broadly speaking, it would be helpful to have, you know, people out there who are talking about nuclear power, for instance. You know, how dangerous is it? How, you know, what would it take to ramp it up? I mean, it would be nice to have these answers sort of like floating out there.
Yeah.
The right has these an enormous amount of resources in terms of think tanks that develop all of these answers that they need, which generally end up being like cut taxes. That ends up being the answers. But they have these policies laid out for the windows where they have the opportunity to push them. We don't really have that on the left. There's been attempts at the times, but very important to develop these ideas even when there's no opportunity to implement them, because more often than not those opportunities show up and they're very ephemeral, they go away very quickly, they exist without warning, and so good to have these ideas out there and to build support behind them so that when those opportunities arise, you're in the lead.
And build them outside of private contexts, right? As opposed to, I feel like there's a lot of technological discourse that is completely sectioned off from the left, that is meant to be in the private sector. But if the left is more engaged in these topics, then we can talk about, like, why does this need to be completely private? This should be a public conversation, there should be public discourse, public resources as well.
Hello. You may remember me from not being a worker. And part of the community of not workers is the technical intelligentsia that contribute to the profits of Google or the lethality of the military-industrial complex. And on the one hand, many of them are actually very studently indebted leftists that really need the rent check. And to you I say, reach out to those friends from college. To them I say, start thinking about what it would mean to take what you actually believe should be the future, what you think is the better path for mankind, and apply that to the work that you're doing. And, if you've got something good going on, leak it to Sam Seder.
MajorityReporters@gmail.com.
I mean, I will say sometimes on the left we use the word technocrat as a negative thing, as an insult, because what we're really thinking about is a kind of liberal politics where you sort of think that politics is this ideologically neutral thing where you just have experts come up with solutions to your problems, and it's not about clashing interests or clashing ideology. And so, of course, we don't like technocrats in that sense, but like actual liberal technocrats are fine. Like you actually need those, you know, to do anything, to achieve your political program, to build socialism. You know that like, you know, it's not like we don't like you know, I don't know, environmental engineers.
Yeah, I mean, if the left actually was in power, the technocrats would flock to us because they would need state jobs. You know, they would need. But often when we think about science and the left and all these questions. We're not thinking about like civil engineers and the people who are the bedrock of all these attempts at third world socialism, and were just the civil service was often the social base of a lot of those governments. So, I mean, when the left's in power, we get technical expertise. When the left is super small, it's been cloistered on universities for the last 30, 40 years in places like the US. You get people with humanities backgrounds, but you know, like myself, you know, it's a bad thing, who don't have that expertise. So I kind of think it comes when you grow a movement, you have more people active, and it comes like when you're actually in power. So I'm not too stressed about our lack of progress there. Though we do have some groups like Science for the People is one group. There's a handful of explicitly socialist kind of STEM-based groups out there nowadays.
And at the risk of sounding like a shit lib, okay, you know, the value of a democratic administration, and there's a lot of things that are not necessarily valuable, is that these agencies open up to people who have relationships with other people who are left of center. And so there's an opportunity to build these institutions. I mean, when Hillary Clinton did not win, there was a lot of people who had sort of banked on that 12th year of a Democratic administration who were, you know, in their late 50s and their 60s, basically said, my career is over. I'm done. Like all the things I built towards are not going to happen. I'm not going to get in there. I'm not going to be able to push this agricultural policy, this economic policy, this FDA measure, this EPA measure. And for all those people at that age cohort, there are people on the other end who are not going to enter in there because they're not going to get hired. And so, I mean, people have to see administrations as for what they are, which is, in many respects, a huge patronage machine. And it's not as naked as it was, you know, in Tammany Hall days, but people get jobs because they know somebody who knows somebody. And when a Republican administration is in there, no one on the left is going to get in. When a Democratic administration is in there, completely open to the assessment that is just less right-wing, but nevertheless, the social and professional relationships are going to get more leftists in that administration. In all of these agencies, I mean, you're talking about tens of thousands of people who enter the civil service and are there for decades. And so...
not just the civil service, but you also have to consider all the contractors and the privatization.
Everything is tangential and ancillary to that as well. I mean, it is really like you're feeding a big machine that is more likely to end up in the pockets of people that you like or vaguely like, and they're going to promote policies that you like or vaguely like.
Yeah. It's not that complicated. Abolishing Republicans is good. Right? That's a Jackman article. All right.
Stevens, baby.
All right. We are going to be hanging out. We're going to be at the bar. We aren't going anywhere anytime soon, but we do have to close this out. I'm really, really happy and grateful for all the people who are on stage. This is, this is other than Sam, who decided not to do Medicare for all. Everybody else, I love very much.
Prize.
All right, Conan, real quick before we go.
Yeah, real quick before we go. I just like to point out that we do have a merch table situated over the door. There's a limited amount of Revolution shirts. Left Reckoning needs to have a checks notes QR code.
Left Reckoning, we're doing a deal on our merch, so it's not here. So check that out. It's at the table. You get access to that.
Is this crypto? Is this crypto? It's crypto, right?
It's crypto for sure.
We're doing crypto, we're doing QR codes, which is the same thing, don't ask.
You're disrupting, we get it, yeah. Also, one more shout out for J.M. World over in the back there. Please give a huge round of applause. He's doing coloring sketches of various things during the night. Those are available for sale as well.
Yeah, if you've ever seen, if you watch the show, you know that Andy will sit there kind of quietly and then he'll come back with some hilarious picture or something somebody just said. He's been doing that. He's been doing courtroom sketches. He has posters. So yes, absolutely. Give it up for Andy.
Give it up for Andy. You can also find him on Movie Night Extravaganza with me and Forrest Miller over there doing the filming this whole thing. Forrest for us. Tirelessly working part of the team.
And thank you to the cutting room staff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, watch Left Reckoning. Matt and David. So happy.
Round of applause, everybody. Give it up. Let's go.
Thank you, Emma, Jordan Report, and the Emma Sports.
Emma
Sports Network, ESPN. Thank you, Sam Seder, even though you don't want to step help.
What a fucking nightmare. Sam Seder, everybody.
Thank you, Bhaskar Sunkara. Jack of the Magazine, putting socials back in the map, American politics. Thank you, Jake, wanting to survive the GTAA
Jake and unions generally. Jake, everybody.
Jake and organized labor. Thank you, Kuba.
Teamster Cuba!
He's like one of 6 people.
I don't know any of you, and I was never here.
He's like one of 6 people who went to Ivy League universities I don't hate. Thank you, Conan Neutron.
You're mispronouncing my name, but thank you anyway, Ben Burgis.
It is so much better than that's as good as you're gonna get.
Yeah, real quick, give it up for Ben Burgis, everybody. I can say that you can.
And last but not least, my neighbor just on the Mexican side of the border, host of This Is Revolution, my favorite podcast other than the one that I host, Jason! Peace!